Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Thought Leader Recruiter podcast. Today, I'm joined by Anthony Theodoris, founder at the Theodoris Group. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Sam, really appreciate you having me on the program.
Yeah, really good to have you here. What inspired you to start at TTG? And when you first launched, what was the kind of aha moment when you thought that the gap you needed to fill was found?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm probably someone that's typically pretty risk averse. I'm a family man, four daughters, under the age of 13 and younger. So, really the reason why I decided to take the leap is timing is everything. And I got a push by the right person in the right direction. So I think that initial push, that with the support of my family, really, made me realize, if I'm gonna do it, now's the time. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So it's time to give that a go. So that's what made me found the business.
Interesting. And TTG, it does HR, consulting, staffing, and recruiting, if I'm correct. That's quite a few services. Which one did you lead with when you started, and how has the business evolved since then?
Yeah, that's also a really good question. The firm has evolved a lot since becoming a staffing and recruiting agent. We've really tried to reorientate our brand in the last, 6 months. We're more than just a staffing and recruiting firm. We actually have an outsourced HR consulting practice, and we have a mergers and acquisitions advisory group. So, we've got our hands in a lot of pies, so to speak. But to kind of walk you through the evolution of the firm, and if I can just give some human anatomy analogies is probably the best way to explain it. I'm a recruiter at heart, so it always made sense that I would start the business in the recruiting space. So it started with our search consulting, our recruiting division. But a good way to kind of use that as a metaphor, if you think about like you cut yourself on your arm and it's bleeding, the search consulting or the recruiting solution was like the band-aid you would put over that cut. So the wound is still bleeding, but you're somewhat plugging the hole, aka filling the role is starting to, plug that hole. But it didn't address the reason why you were cut in the first place. So re-evolutionizing the firm, we went backwards and we started thinking, well, hang on, how did we get cut? Why was that position open in the first place? Why do you have turnover? Why do you keep filling the same role every year or multiple roles every year? Why are you not attracting the right candidates? So that led to our HR consulting practice being born. And that solution was like the antidote to the disease. So it enabled a business to foresee that they may scratch their arm before they had the need for the band-aid and the recruiting solution. So, our HR consulting practice can deliver, very robust solutions around workforce planning, employee engagement and retention, leadership management and development, HR compliance, which is a very hot topic right now. Honestly, the most reason why organizations are sued is for wage and hour and misclassification of employees and also risk management. So those are huge, attractive items of discussion for our clients. And optimization, how can we be more efficient? So it just naturally evolved from recruiting to the HR consulting practice, again, the band-aid and the antidote. And then from that, we started talking with owners that, hey, Anthony, we're thinking about selling our business, or Anthony, we're thinking of buying a company to augment a service, or we've got an owner that wants to exit. They're ready to buy the big boat and go on the big sailing trip. And so we also evolved our mergers and acquisitions advisory group so we can handle transactions from 1 million to 200 million in size. So that's really the services that TTG offers.
Yeah, I love that analogy as well. It makes it, yeah, really clear. Yeah, I love that. So, what's your kind of sweet spot client right now? Are there any certain industries or types of companies you found you work best with?
I think the way we've structured the firm, we've structured to be industry agnostic. We don't really want to necessarily specialize as a company in the industry. But if I talk about recruiting for a minute, our recruiters specialize by desk. So you may have an engineering recruiter, an accounting recruiter, a finance recruiter, a mortgage recruiter, a title recruiter. So even though the company in itself is a generalist, we specialize by desk. So we can still create that level of expertise that I think in a very competitive industry like staffing, you have to have the edge. So we can still appear to the masses until you become a client, and then you get very tailored solutions. So to answer your question around specifics, I mean, honestly, I'd rather talk about middle market, where our ideal client profile is, lower middle market, one employee to 1,000 employees in size. It's still an owner operated business. There's no publicly traded influence or private equity influence. That is really our bread and butter. That's the sandpit we like to play in.
When clients come to you, what's the most common hiring headaches they're dealing with?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, it can vary. I think quite often, we take like a reactive and a proactive recruit to our clients. So what that means is, of course, like most agencies, we can react to a client. So, hey, Sam, it's Anthony. I need an accountant. Can you find me an accountant? My accountant quit. Or, hey, Anthony, we just want a contract. We need 3 engineers. Can you find one for us? So that's reacting to a recruit. But we take it a step further. When you become a client of ours during our intake process, we actually try to get an understanding of the peaks and the troughs in their business. So when they have a higher demand for skill set and when they have a lower demand for skill set. So for example, if I use a public accounting firm, tax time in America is typically from January 1st to April 15. So we know a lot of the hiring in tax firms happens from, October through December of the year before. So what we'll actually do is we'll stock up on tax accountants. And what we'll do is we'll take all those resumes and we will market them out to all of our clients in that high demand period. So we're being proactive, knowing that they're going to need that employee because of the demand in their business. So, to answer your question, we really try to take a proactive approach. I think it's better for the client because we can react quicker. It's better for the candidate experience because they get an interview very quickly. And so that's kind of our solution in that respect.
Yeah, makes total sense and very smart as well. So what's been your most kind of effective way to bring on new clients? Do you do outbound referrals, partnerships?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have all of the above. We have, first of all, a lot of our organic business development. So we have a business development team led by our VP of Sales and Operations. And we have staff both in California and Texas, so pretty good spread, and we can service anywhere in the United States. And so, we have both that organic, the business development through the sales team. Then we have our inorganic business development through our affiliate referral program. So we have a dedicated affiliate referral program where people that refer us business can get paid real cash for a referral once it closes. That's been very successful. And then we have, a network. We have attorneys firms, CPA firms, a lot of those, business to business advisory firms that are kind of dealing with the same decision maker that we want to pitch to. We're building relationships with those that then provide us inorganic business development. We've also done 2 mergers. I've merged 2 other organizations into the firm. So if I continue to talk about maybe inorganic strategic growth, I've merged an engineering recruiting firm. They specialize in engineering into our practice. The owner of that business is now a member of our search consulting group. I also merged an HR consulting practice in California into our HR consulting team. Her specialty was actually in the medical and dental space. And so we had identified a need in that area. And so we were able to bring her into our platform. So I think, for any firm that's looking to grow, you've got to have a diversified field of referral networks and sources in addition to your own cold business development.
You got to cover all bases for sure.
You have to. Yep.
How do you kind of define success with a client just beyond filling a role? What kind of metrics or outcomes matter most to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that, if someone was to ask me my famous quote, it's in terms of referrals, it's probably a referral is a recruiter's ultimate compliment. So if we have a customer or a prospect that comes to us from a referral, that to me means we've been successful with the client because they've referred someone to us for the same type of work or similar work that we're doing for them. So I think that's one measure of success is that referral. Second of all, repeat business. If they keep coming back to us, we must be doing something right. And we have a lot of repeat business. In fact, we have not just repeat business in one business line. For example, if we're with a client with a recruiting task, like we're trying to fill a role for them, but they have an organizational issue, they're also coming to us for HR consulting. So now we have a second business line that can support them as well. So those are measures of success in my mind. It doesn't always have to be about revenue. Yes, we're all capitalists who want to grow the business. Revenue is important, cash flow is important. However, I think that cash flow and revenue take care of itself when you look after the client.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And have you seen any shift in demand for staffing versus full-time hires in your client base recently?
That's a really good comment. I think that's probably one of the most common questions we get asked all the time. What is the solution? Like, do we want a temp? Do we want a direct hire person, or a search? What we call direct hire is our internal designation for that. The advice that I always give to clients, first of all, we have to be advisors. We can't tell a client what they should or shouldn't do, but we can educate them and we can become a partner to their success. And usually, how I answer that question with a client is I say, it's typically dictated by the candidate pool. So, for example, temp to hire is great because, hey, we can try this candidate before they buy. They're on our payroll, so we're the employer of record. So, we take on a lot of that liability from an employee perspective, and our clients like that flexibility. But what it does is, if you've got a split candidate pool, you've got 50% will take a temp to hire role, but 50% won't because they're in full-time work and they won't leave a role for attempt to hire, you're cutting off 50% of your candidate base, and maybe even more than 50%. So my question to the client would be, we want to bring you the best possible person. It could be a temp or a direct hire, and you should pick the person that's best suited to the role, not necessarily because of the cost that's involved or the method that we're bringing them on board to you. So that education or that consulting aspect of the solution is more important to me than just the cost. Yes, cost is important, but not to put the right person in the seat. We don't just want to put a bum in the seat. It's going to turn over. They're going to spend a bunch of money, and we're back in the same spot we were 3 months before.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And are companies what are companies getting wrong when it comes to attracting top talent today?
Yeah. So, how to attract top talent and some of the, I guess, the roadblocks for bringing on top talent. I mean, I think time kills all deals. And this actually causes the candidate it could cause the candidate's asking price to increase. So what that means is, I have a client ring me, Anthony, we need an accountant. Our budget is 60 grand. That's what we want to pay someone. We get a bunch of candidates who all want $60,000. That's what they want at the first interview. Now, if it takes them a month and a half to hire that person, and in a month and a half, that person that wanted 60 grand now wants 70 because they have other offers at 65 or 67 or 68. And our client says to us, well, Anthony, we want to hire your person. You told us 60, but now they want 70. Did you lie to us or what's going on? I said, well, they were 60 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks have transpired. Now you have competition for them. It's created a bidding war. So time, I think, is our greatest adversary when it comes down to bringing on candidates and top talent. Quite often they have multiple offers. So, how, instead of them saying to us, how are we going to attract the best talent for their organization? We turn the question around. How are you going to attract the best talent for your organization? We are an extension of you. We can't change your culture. We can't change your time to make a decision. Those are all rested on the client. And we have those conversations right at the order taking time so that we understand expectation as we're going through the recruit. And there's no surprises at the end now that the candidate wants an extra 10 grand.
Yeah, makes sense. And I suppose that all comes down to employer branding as well, and their kind of culture fit. That must be important in that aspect as well.
I think really good recruiters are really great at telling stories as well. And even though you've got a company that may be working on their culture, it may not be perfect, they may have had some turnover. We have the ability to still find the great attributes in that organization to then tell and focus the story to the candidate about what's great about that organization. You know, glass half full. So what that means is we want candidates that are really happy that they've got half a glass of drink. Okay, this is a great organization still, not complain about where's the other half of my drink. So I think when we apply that sort of methodology to our clients, we can service anybody. It doesn't matter whether the culture is top of mind, third on the list, or bottom of the list. It just changes the way we tell the story to the candidate.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I suppose like in the early stages, like scaling past the early hustle is tough, right? So what processes and systems have been kind of game changers for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think going from, for me personally, going from, a traditional D2 employee, someone that was part of a corporation, then and worrying about my own production necessarily. Now my mindset had to change now being an owner and the team's success or the company's success is more of a priority to me. HR consulting is a highly technical field. You have to be highly qualified. They're quite often MBA grads, HR, certified. These are expertise that I don't have. Mergers and acquisitions is a highly regulated industry. I'm not a mergers and acquisitions person, but because I hired the right people, I hired to the skill sets that I didn't have, and then I got out of their way to let them do their role. It enables us to create successful business lines for our clients. So, to answer your question, it was my superpower is being able to hire the right people in the right teams and then getting out of their way and letting them be successful. So that is how we're going to continue to scale. That will enable us to get into business lines that are unique and maybe not necessarily traditional staffing business lines like HR consulting or that enables us to continue to scale and grow. I think quality is first before scaling. So you can't try to scale and then reduce the quality. You're going to lose clients. I think you need to get the quality and the process right first, and then you have to look at ways to scale but still maintain quality. Again, I know it's cliche when I say it. Quality, not quantity. I think that that's critical. And again, I think we just need to continue to hire the right people in the right areas that are not just engaged in the growth of TTG, but are also engaged in the growth of their clients. And I think that is the key to balancing quality and scale.
Absolutely. So, what's next for TTG? Any plans to expand into new verticals or markets?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, we do. In the next 12 months, we're actually going to launch another two business lines. We haven't launched our contingent or temporary services line yet, but we will plan on launching that in the next 6 months. We've already secured the real estate for the office locations. And then second business line we're going to launch is TTG's strategic services. And what that is a fractional and interim CFO and controller work where we can be a better outsource partner for our clients. So those are going to launch in the next 6 to 12 months. We're very excited by those revenue streams and opportunities. And it will just enable us to then be able to support our clients through a full life cycle from startup to sale. We'll be able to assist a client anywhere through that life cycle.
Amazing, exciting times.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Well, yeah, thanks so much for today. Really appreciate it. Where can our audience kind of find out a bit more about TTG and connect with yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the first place I would direct people to would be to our website. You could just Google the Theodoris Group, and our website where we've just revamped it. It's fantastic. So it explains a bit about our leadership team and our staff, our areas of service and our expertise. And you can also find us on LinkedIn. We've grown our LinkedIn presence to over 4,000 followers in 9 months. So it's grown very, very quickly. We post 3 times a day, between 2 and 3 times a day on LinkedIn. We do polls, we have blogs, and we're going to hopefully have our own podcast in the next 12 to 18 months. So those are the best ways to connect with us. And we're excited to connect with all of our community.
Great stuff, Anthony. Thanks so much again. And yeah, this has been the Thought Leader Group podcast. Catch you next time.